to the Octavius Gould experience. I am so excited to have as a guest my friend and former teammate, Darrell Thompson. Darrell, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Octavius. It's an honor to be here with you, and always fun to rekindle old relationships.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Darrell, let me, for the purposes of my audience, introduce you by starting with your background and how we met. So for everyone who's tuning in today, you know that I try to bring on guests who are compelling, who have a compelling story and journey that can really give people roadmaps to success. So Darrell is the first former athlete that I've had on my podcast. However, he is a very successful business professional as well. So when we get into his background, I think you all will find something that you can take away from this episode that will help you or even your children when we talk about what he's doing now in his business career. So to take you back from the start, Darrell and I met at the University of Minnesota. He was my teammate there, an outstanding running back, but more importantly, he was a great person. And Darrell, that's the thing that I remember most 15, 20, 30 years after our playing days at the University of Minnesota is how humble you were. And as I think about this episode, I have to reflect on how many athletes I've met throughout my career as an athlete and a business professional. And there aren't too many that I can say were as humble as you are. So I just commend you on always being yourself, being authentic, and just being a great person.
Well, you're embarrassing me, but I do believe, that, we're all given abilities and talents, and I was just trying to do the best that I could with what the good Lord gave me and what my parents, gave me and taught me. Sports were a big deal and were not a big deal in my house when I was growing up. My mom was a school teacher, a former college athlete. My dad was an engineer, a former college athlete. So I did hit the genetic lottery when it comes to being an athlete. Having two parents that are incredible athletes typically means you're going to have kids that are athletic.
Now, I'm quite sure that it was really challenging for you from the perspective of the anticipation and expectations of you being someone who was raised in Minnesota, going to the University of Minnesota to start your collegiate career. How did you handle that pressure of coming from Rochester, Minnesota into Minneapolis with those expectations?
That's a great question. Really, to me, it was one day at a time. It was one day at a time. I did feel like I didn't know anyone who was playing, in college sports at that time. There was just one gentleman, one football player that went and played Division III football. I talked to him. He talked about taking care of your body and stretching and drinking water, just some really, fundamental, basic things that made sense to me, and they rang true. But the expectation was more than I thought it was once I arrived, and I felt more of it from my teammates that were in the room of mine than I felt it before that. So it was interesting that when I came in there were some guys that were not quite as excited to see me as I thought they might be, if you know what I mean.
That's always the case, right?
Yeah. This hotshot guy has come here to take my job, and he's the savior. And I didn't feel like I was there to take anyone's job, or that I was certainly not the savior. But it was. But then you grow when you learn together, and you become teammates and brothers. And a lot of those guys now, we laugh and joke about it, but we still talking. But it was challenging in the beginning.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you have an incredible career at the University of Minnesota. You become a first-round draft pick in 1990, if I'm correct. I'm dating both of us now.
Yeah, exactly.
First-round draft pick of the Green Bay Packers. What was it like going from Minnesota, Vikings world, to become a Packer, and not only a Packer, but a first-round draft pick?
Similar. It was intimidating. Getting drafted by the Packers, being drafted, period, is a lifelong dream, right? So we all want to play, you want to be drafted, and to be drafted by the Packers. And obviously I learned a lot about the Packers. I didn't know before then that the Packers existed before the Vikings, and that there was a ton of Packer fans in Minnesota. Right. So those people gravitated to both of my parents. And it was really a unique experience to go to an organization that had won Super Bowls and championships, and to meet former players there and to play with the current players there. It was a phenomenal experience.
We talked a second about that expectation that you had to overcome being a home state kid at the University of Minnesota. What was it like handling those expectations of being a first round draft pick in the NFL?
Similar there, similar there, and some people might feel like you never reach your full potential. You come into a situation and you're supposed to be one of the guys that helps get that organization going in the right direction. And if all the pieces and parts aren't in place, then it gets to be a very, very challenging, career. You're sometimes happy to carve out 2 or 3 years. So it was a challenge. It was also a blessing. I got to be a part of actually the end, unfortunately, of Lindy Infante's career, the beginning of the Mike Holmgren era, and having Brett Favre and having Reggie White and playing with Sterling Sharp. That was the change in that transition. And, unfortunately, the position that we played, you and I were selected by the good Lord to play running back, means you take a tremendous amount of hits and shots, so my body was starting to deteriorate after about year 3. And I knew that I was just trying to hang on, from that point on. So eventually you move on, but it still was, one of the high points of my football career was, playing professional football, playing, with and against some of the greatest or the greatest players in the world.
Right. Well, you dropped some impressive names. I think a lot of people forget, or they may be too young to realize, with Shannon Sharp being in the media now, having a podcast, how great Sterling Sharp was back in the day.
Well, let me say this. Sterling Sharp is better than Shannon Sharp, and Shannon Sharp would say that. Sterling was strong, and strong is putting it mildly. He was almost Hulk type strong. I mean, he would throw defensive backs, if they came up on press coverage on him, into the bleachers, into the sideline, at the top of routes. It was a physical time, and Sterling was an extremely physical, extremely confident, and extremely intelligent. He is the most intelligent football player that I ever played with. This guy had 2 degrees in 3 years from South Carolina, and knew our playbook inside, and actually knew our defense, which I don't even know how he knew the defense. He knew the calls, he knew the singles. He learned them for fun. Like you just pick up another language. He learned the signs and the singles from the sideline. Tremendous player that, like his brother said, he should be in the Hall of Fame. He said he's the only person in the Hall of Fame whose brother is better than him.
I agree. I've mentored a few former athletes, and one of the things that I realize, it's really difficult for a lot of professional athletes, whether you play 2 or 3 years in the NFL, and you talked about the lifespan. I think people have said the NFL stands for not for long.
True.
And one of the things that I've learned, Darrell, is that it's really difficult for a lot of professional athletes in any sport, but especially in the NFL, to make that transition from their athletic career into retirement and to figure out what journey they want to pursue next. How did you go about that process and come out on top?
I don't know if I came out on top. I think you come out and you get basically spit out by the NFL or the NBA or whatever that might be, and you got to find something that you're passionate about. I mean, I think we all need that, and that is what I was searching for. And I was passionate about community. I was passionate about kids. Obviously, I have a family myself, but I think that my passion was around making an impact in the community, which I got from my parents. Both of my parents were involved in the community, very, very committed to the community and to making an impact. And that's played a large role in my life.
And as you made that transition, what lessons did you acquire being a former athlete that help you in the business world or within the community, whether it be discipline, things of that nature that you were able to hold close to you and leverage?
I think it's persistence. A lot of times, and when I run a small youth program, like about a $2 million budget, so it's not huge. But when we started, it was a $30,000 budget. And then it's $50,000, it's $100,000, it's $500,000, and over the course of the last 30 years, we've got it built up into a $2 million organization that impacts thousands of kids on a yearly basis, and it's more than I ever thought that it would be. But it doesn't happen without, sometimes you come to the building It's quiet, not very much is going on, and you have to put that time and energy into continue to spread the word about your program and continue to recruit mentors, continue to engage and keep your donors involved as well.
So that brings us to your current role as president of Boulder Options. And I'm really impressed with your background in that role and all the things that you all are doing, the great things in the community, because one of my clients happened to be the Boys and Girls Club of America. And every time I am speaking in front of their great team members or speaking at their events, I am always struck by something that I heard and watched during the NFL draft. There was a player, I think 2 years ago, he got drafted in a first round draft pick. He thanked his mom and the Boys and Girls Club of America. And
Yeah,
that
it was
really
awesome.
impressive.
It
So,
was, yeah.
yeah, you're sitting as the president of Boulder Options. How did you initially get involved with that nonprofit? And talk to me about some of the great things that you all are doing in multiple communities.
Well, I got involved when I was in the NFL. We were not joking earlier. I mean, NFL does stand for not for long, besides the National Football League. And the opportunity for me, I mean, I know I needed to train while I was in the off season, but I said I'm training probably 4.5 or 5 hours a day.
Mhm.
That means I got at least 2 or 3 hours a day where I can spend some time with a program, an organization, start to figure out what I want to do when I get done playing football. So I did that. And the Minneapolis JC's Charitable Foundation had an organization, a very, very small pilot program called Boulder Options. So I went down there, I spoke to the kids, I rode my bike with the kids, just spent a little bit of time. I did that just a couple times during my, going into my 4th year and then going into my 5th year similarly. And then after I got done, after I couldn't pass a physical anymore, I started working part-time for the Minneapolis JC's Charitable Foundation, and Boulder Options was one of those programs. And it still is, but even at that point, 30 years ago, Boulder Options was extremely unique. Nobody was running with kids. No one was biking with kids. Nobody was doing a goal-setting program with adventure learning and the activities. So all those things were combined. They were unique with the healthy curriculum in it. The activity was what made it different from other programs and made us unique, and actually drew mentors to the program. Told me I like this because I actually have an activity to do with the mentor, with my mentee. And when I start to think about the stories of the youth, I mean, I get emotional almost every time because I've held babies of young ladies and young men that have been in our program. I've been to graduations. I've been to anniversaries. I've been to a tremendous amount of activities that, if not for our organization and the mentor and the mentee and that lifelong connection, that they'd be in a different place, and that place might not be as healthy, might not be as fruitful as it is now. We hired about 2 years ago the first person that was a mentee in our program that is now an employee of our organization, and she's doing a tremendous job. She graduated about 11 years ago from our program, did a couple internships with us, and then as we were looking for a development and a data analyst, this young lady was head and shoulders above. We had to do the interviewing the process just because we did, but she was head and shoulders above all the other folks. And she currently works here and does a great job, and is one of our speakers when we talk about our product and what we do and what happens to other recipients. So there's the impact on our community is tremendous. And I think about the cost of one young person lost to a life of crime and negative activity is around $2.5 million in current bills. And our 1 year budget for our organization is $2 million. Mm-hmm. So for someone to invest in Boulder Options, whether it be $100 or $100,000, it's one of the best investments you can make in our community.
How do you go about securing funding and raising funds to support the youth that you're supporting?
It's a daily grind for us. Not a grind, but it's a daily process. So you're always talking to people, you're always trying to engage new people, and you're also following up with the people that you do have that have supported you and supported us, and also letting them know what their dollars are doing. Everything from the story about the young lady that I talked to you about to what we have a group of kids that went to the Boundary Waters this year. We've gone to Colorado. We've done a lot of different things with our youth, just so people understand what's going on with the 60 to 80 kids that are currently involved in our program, what's happening with our alumni program, what's going on with our speaking program, and any other activity. We have a little small scholarship program. We have a handful of kids that are able to go to school on a scholarship that was one of our former donors set up. So just making sure people understand the impact that they're helping us make in the community.
And I know you've expanded your reach beyond Minneapolis since you started with the organization and as president of Voter Options. What are the communities that you all are serving today?
Octavius, we serve youth in Minneapolis, the first ring suburbs of Minneapolis. We also serve St. Paul. That's like the sister city to Twin Cities. And then we also serve youth in Rochester. So we actually, about half of our programming is done in Rochester, my hometown. We're the kind of the back office. We do a lot of things. I'm actually going to go down there today for just a little bit, but it is, the Rochester office is rocking. It's full. It's busy. We're actually looking for a facility down there as we speak. So, we have a building and a headquarters here in the Twin Cities, and we're looking to eventually purchase a building in Rochester and have, some of the same impact and space that we have up here.
And if someone is looking to potentially get involved with Voter Options, how could they go about getting involved with your organization or even a similar organization if they're outside of Minnesota and they want to get involved locally so they can show up and be present more often?
I would suggest going to the website, going to our website, take a good look at what we do with Voter Options, and then actually to get a deeper knowledge, I would take a look at our Instagram and take a look at our LinkedIn. It'll show like, oh, here's the activities we're doing. Here's the matches. Here's the kids. Here's what the actual kids, mentors and mentees look like. People think I could never do that because I'm not like, I'm not a marathon runner. You don't have to be a marathon runner.
Right.
You don't got to be, a tremendous biker. What you've got to do is care. If you care, that's all we really want. Everything else is trainable. We'll have things for you. We have activities and runs and rides and nutrition. We had opened a building last night, so we had computers and desks, and we have food and snacks and things like that. So people don't have to, you don't have to figure out everything. The majority of the time with a mentee is spent in the car, talking, listening. Some maybe debating over a radio station is become a popular one. Actually, the whole time I've been here, that's always like, I never even knew that station existed, but I'm bobbing in my head to, whatever this young lady or young man wants to. It's like, it's refreshing. I can only listen to so much talk radio and news and everything else. So I want to, let me bob my head and laugh and joke with this young lady or young man for, an hour or two a week.
One of the things I realized, Darrell, is that the youth of today, they're a lot more savvy than I know I was when I was 15, 16. They're exposed to so much with social media, and just the education that they're receiving, I think, is on a whole new level. I'm a girl dad, and sometimes I'm sitting with my daughters, specifically my high school freshman, and we're talking about schoolwork or something, and she knows I'm not having dad help me with my math, for one, but some of the things that they say will catch you off guard. So you have to be on your toes every conversation and be ready to pivot, right?
Oh my goodness, absolutely, no question. I mean, with my youngest being right now 25, my oldest being 32, and I'm a grandfather. I've been a grandfather for almost 4 years now. There is things flying around, and in learning to kind of check yourself when your grandkids are on, because they are you forget how much of a sponge a 4-year-old is.
Right.
So it's a blast, but yeah, you're right. It's always challenging, but it does, to me and us. I mean, it keeps you young. It's fun. It's engaging, and and they're the future. We're a small part of helping to kind of forge the future with our youth.
And with that being said, you're a grandfather. Congratulations, first of all. I'm not a granddad yet, so you beat me to that, thankfully. But how did you go about balancing work and life? That work-life balance is really important as president of Voter Options. And I know you're doing even more in the community. You're an analyst/announcer for the Minnesota Gophers football program. How did you balance work and life and show up?
It's interesting because I was talking to my youngest son. My youngest son's a basketball player, played college in Indiana and currently is actually he just left yesterday to go to play for the Memphis Grizzlies and their G League team. We were talking about the balance of what do you want to do with your career? Because he's been said, hey, you would be a good coach because he loves the game. He thinks the game really well when he gets done playing, if it's 1 year or if it's 5 years or 10 years, whatever that might be. And I said, I feel like that's me. I felt like, but I know that being a coach meant that I was going to be gone almost all the time. Right. I didn't want to be gone. I saw what my coaches did and I loved what they did, mostly. I said, but I didn't really want to be gone Monday through Sunday, like all the time, college or professional. That's what they are. It's gotten better, but it's still a tremendous amount of time. And obviously the pay has gotten, of course, increasingly, better too. But I didn't really like that lifestyle. So to me, the work-life balance of having I'm home 90% of the times on the weekends. I get to pick, those things. Yeah, I work hard. I work, 8 to 6, 9 to 5, sometimes, I'm like today, one of those days where I got to go till almost 9 o'clock at night, but that's not the norm. So I'm actually more excited about those days than not. And they typically are relational, not just, looking at film and talking to, a group of guys in a room about, how we're going to beat this next team this weekend, which would be fun as well. I do. I mean, I think that's a great thing. So to me, it's the work-life balance of choosing what you want to do. And also sometimes, and I've had to do it here. I was coaching one of my kids' teams. I said, hey, I got to leave this meeting because I have a practice. I've got to coach at 5:30. So I have a hard stop here at 4 o'clock. So I can actually get home, change, and, pick up the 2 kids I got to pick up. And then obviously my own kid and be at this practice. So when you tell someone that, they understand that my family is important to me. And it is important to me and always has been important to me. So I think when you lay that out there, people, sometimes they sit back, but then they also said, what are you going to do? You're going to argue with this guy that he's, coaching his kids' team and, Tuesdays and Thursdays, he's got to leave the office at 4 o'clock. Absolutely not. They should do that. We need that in our country.
Exactly. And with all of the youth that you've helped over the years, what's that one touching moment that will make you cry on my podcast episode today so I can laugh at you?
It's interesting. I've told the story a few times. So there was a young man that was on my caseload 20 years ago. Not 20 years ago. It would be 27 years ago to be exact. And he graduated from the program. At that point, we didn't have an alumni program. I would say, hey, you want to stay in touch? Just give me a call. We'll go to lunch anytime you want. So this young guy had been out of our program for almost 4 or 5 years. He called me and said, hey, I want you to come over on Saturday. And I was like, I just started broadcasting, but I got this weekend off. And he kept calling me, and I was telling my wife, God, this kid really wants me to come over. Mm-hmm. So I get to this, I come over, I go to his house on that Saturday, and I get there, I knock on the door. He comes to the door, and he has his daughter in his hands. And he said, I wanted you to be at her first birthday party, right? So when I think about what we do, I think about the example of that young man wanted me to be there for his daughter's first birthday party. It makes it real. It brings it to life, and it makes me excited and appreciative of why I come to work every day. And now it's interesting. I still talk to him. And I talked to his wife, and then actually the daughter now that she's grown, she's in college, and she means more to me than she knows. So that's one of the main reasons that I'm here and that I come to work, because that's one of my, impactful stories and impacted me and impacted our organization.
Now you have me ready to wipe, my eyes. It's interesting. I was on LinkedIn, and you and I keep in touch. We've kept in touch on LinkedIn. We've had conversations on Zoom. About 4 years ago, I get this message from a gentleman that I met, I want to say in 1991. He was maybe 5. I was living in Florida. Was just outside throwing the ball with him, was taking him to the gym, working out, showing him how to lift properly, not to lift because he was so young, all the things to watch out for. You know how it is.
Right. Yeah.
And he sends me this message a few years ago about the impact that I made on his life and asked me if I remembered him. I remembered him right away. And that's what I reflected on prior to asking you that question, because I think people don't realize the impact that we can have on someone's life. And it doesn't necessarily even have to be someone who's going through a great program like Boulder Options. It could be just someone that we take the time with just to show, as you mentioned at the beginning of this episode, that we care. Because I always say people don't worry about what you know unless they know you care.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I knew you had not only one of those stories, I'm quite sure you have many of those stories just for the type of person you are and the kindness that I saw even back in 1987, 1988. So, man, I am so proud of you. Not necessarily what you did as an athlete, but who you were and who you are as a man. And if no one has told you within the past week, month, year, how much they care about you and what you do, I want to be the first one to do that, man, because I've known you since 1987. I could not wait to get you on this podcast to talk about more than you being a former NFL superstar, being a first-round draft pick, because I've watched from afar all the things that you were doing within the community and how respected you were in Minneapolis. I was talking to a young woman who works for one of my competitors. We won't get into her name or their names because I don't want to promote any of my competitors because I am very competitive.
Right.
We're on that football field. But I think I connected you two, and she had a conversation with you. And she circled back to me and she said, Octavius, he's even more impressive than you told me he would be. And I said, exactly, because Darrell shows up. And that's the thing about leaders. Leaders have to show up. So let's talk about your leadership at Boulder Options. What's your philosophy on leadership and how do you go about being a leader who not only impacts your team members, but also the youth that are coming through Boulder Options?
Well, I think that it does start with the fact, like what we talked about, is that I lead with that I care. I do want to know what's going on in your life, and if I can help, if I can ease it, or sometimes people just need to talk. So there's, to me, and I had a speech on leadership a couple days ago. I think a lot of the great leaders I've been around in sport and out of sport are great listeners. They listen. Mike Holmgren was a great listener, and he was a very, very good coach. But when you know that people listen and when they care, then the rest of it becomes as a delivery style and all those different types of things. And I think that part, to me, and being able to hold people accountable so that when you do have to have a challenging or difficult conversation with someone, you feel like you built some rapport, you poured water into their trough as well. You're not just coming to say, hey, I need to tell you that you need to do this, this, and this, and you're showing up for late work, and I don't know what you're doing, all those different types of things, especially in our current work environment, because it is challenging. It is hard to get people to come back to work. So there's these battles, every day. But my primary leadership is around caring, listening, and trying to build people up.
I always tell people, Darrell, who I coach, you have to listen to comprehend and not to respond. So that's really important.
Yeah. Yeah.
And dealing with staff, your team members, and dealing with youth, I know developing emotional intelligence was really important and having empathy. How has your ability to have that empathy and then show it help you become even more trusted as a leader within Boulder Options to make the impact that you're making on your staff and some of those members?
I think it allows people to know, for me, one of the most important things, and it's like, this is sports, it's military, it's business. People want to know that you got their back. So that part to me is I feel like I know my family knows I got their back. And I do feel like my coworkers here at Boulder Options feel like I have your back. I mean, you do your job, but like I do have your back. I understand there's challenging situations with people and life and things happen, people live, people die, have divorce, all those things happen. But I do think people understand that we or I have their back. I think that's where things start.
And I'm going to jump back into the locker room. One of the things that I truly believe is that being a former athlete and having been in a locker room with people from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, social economic situations prepares you well once you get into corporate America to be able to deal with different personalities and different behaviors in the workplace. How did that experience in the locker room, whether it had been at Minnesota or with the Packers, help you at Boulder Options and just dealing with different youth and then the different personalities that you deal with day in and day out on your team?
Well, I think the number one thing in dealing with different personalities and different teams and different people, in particular in the locker room, you have people from California, people from Florida, people from Iowa, people from Texas, all different sizes and shapes and of people. And you actually have to learn how to get along with those folks. And then you get the added thrust of when you're a college athlete, it said, hey, we're going to go meet with this group of people, this group of business leaders. And you're like, oh my gosh. So now I got to try to, put on like some dress pants and a collared shirt and go in this environment and go talk to these people about like what's going on to help raise money for the university or just talk or be present at a banquet, at an event, at a fundraiser, whatever that might be. So you get thrust into these environments. And then, if you're also one of the players on the team that might have some success, you get microphones thrown in front of your face. So you get that opportunity, and they're mostly pretty easier questions like, hey, that was a big game. How did you feel at that? It's like, oh, well, that's straightforward. But then little by little, that does give you a little bit of confidence to understand different situations. So all those different situations combined, I think helps to, build up a young man or a young lady to give them a little bit, I wouldn't say a head start, but it gives them a little bit of an advantage as far as their seasoning coming into a situation for someone that might not have those type of experiences in college.
And Darrell, what advice would you give to my listeners, whether they're a corporate leader or just a parent who has a youth who wants to go to the WNBA, the NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball, and they're laser focused on being that professional athlete? What advice would you give them that they can instill in their children about the importance of education, the importance of having something to fall back on, and just remaining humble like you are?
I think the number one thing, I was just talking to my son about it, is balance. I think we all need balance. And I was blessed with that for the most part growing up. There's obviously challenging times, with your parents and as you're growing up, and we did too with our kids. So I think number one, it's about balance, and then trying to be. It's impossible to be like impartial. Everyone kind of looks at their kid like you're the next LeBron James, you're the next, that type of thing. But it is really the goal being that you work with your son or your daughter to be the best that they can be, and to be a great teammate, and to have fun, and to have realizing like what we have, a relationship that's going to go a lifetime. Exactly. Right. So Darrell and Octavius, not only were we like, backfield mates slapping hands, so we coming in and out of the game, but we're also like now life mates. You're gonna be like, hey man, so what's going on with your daughter? What's going on with your son? Or hey, we're gonna have a class reunion, or I'm gonna be in your area. Let's stop and and grab a beer or something like that. So I mean, it's such this little window of this little AAU season, or this little basketball meet, or this track meet, and then there's like this whole thing called life, and we're living this life together. So this little window of, whether my daughter is a starter or my son is a starter on this AAU team that's going around the country, not quite as important as we think it is.
Yeah. When I was in high school, I had a game, Darrell, when I scored 4 touchdowns, had maybe about 250 yards. I got into the car, and my biggest critic, who kept me humble and on point, my mother, looked back and said, "It was okay, but you looked a little slow to me."
I like it. I like it. Yeah.
And with that being said, what's the best advice you've ever received from your parents or ever gave to your children that will be a life lesson or something that they will always take with them?
You can't believe this, but I think number one is be yourself.
Mhm.
Be yourself and be humble, because there's always somebody who's better. And I think there's always, so it's like always peeking around the corner. There's always someone training, someone that's working harder, than you are. So, I mean, to me, it's about, that advice would be to train, be humble, and be respectful of the game. And then I told my kids from the time they could handle it, I said, have fun, work hard, and don't take any shit. That's the Thompson mantra as they get out of the car before they get in, all the way from about 6th grade to right now 25. My kids, I still say, even though both my boys are tall, they're 6'4" and 6'8", so now they like to look down on me and try to overpower me. So different phase of life.
Well, I have something for you as we start to wrap up. I was talking to a CEO, and he graduated from the University of Michigan. And I said to him, I said, I went to Minnesota. What year did you go to Michigan? He was there about the same time, I think 85 to about 88. I said, so you must remember one of my friends, Darrell Thompson, running that, I think was it 98 yards or 99 on
98.
Bo's team?
Yeah. Yeah. Bo got on me about that. He said he wanted to stick his leg out there, but didn't want to have a Woody Hayes moment. So he was aware.
Yeah, and the CEO, he remembered that moment. He didn't remember any other game or any other highlight during his Michigan days except that TD that you had. And he just said, man, he was gone. He said, I just remember he got the ball and he was gone.
Well, that's flattering. That's flattering. The only hard part was we lost that game.
Mhm.
That was tough because we beat them the year before. And they were ranked number 2 in the country. We were unranked, so it was a big deal. And then we came into that game with some momentum and with some energy. And we had one, I think just right before you got there, we had one play where they don't have instant replay. Then Ricky Foggy scored, and then the ball gets knocked out of his hands in the end zone, and then they get the ball on the 20-yard line. So really, it cost us, 7 points at a minimum. We end up losing that game by like a touchdown or something like that. So to lose the game like that, and there's other errors in that game too as well. But I mean, it's just kind of, that's the pain of football. And I think about that game. I had, I want to say, like a little over 200 yards, and had that run that was a record setting. I still never celebrated, unfortunately, because we lost. We just went in, when you have a great game and you lose, it really doesn't mean very much.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
yeah.
And that's not how a lot of athletes approach those highlights or celebrate themselves. That's the humbleness that you have, focusing on team. And that leads me to teamwork. How do you define teamwork within your organization at Boulder Options, and how do you promote teamwork within that organization?
Well, number one, it's teamwork to me, and it's challenging. So I was talking to some other, actually another CEO this morning. It's about communication.
Mhm.
It's about showing up. It's about respect. And it's about doing your homework. So those pieces to me they're key and they're important, and it's something that we're working on here at Boulder Options. Being able to communicate better, and to work as because we're really not out of the pandemic. We're not out of this hybrid work environment, or the work from home, or the in our families, are learning through that as well. So it's been a challenging time to come through this. We're, I'd say, about 75% of the way there. We'll never get 100%, but I'd be happy if we get to about 90.
Well, Darrell, I tell you what, I am so grateful that you spent some time with me today on this podcast episode. And I just want to make sure that you and your team truly understand how much people like myself appreciate the work that you all are doing. Because again, there are so many youth out there that, as you stated, just need to know that someone cares and that they're not alone. And the impact that you all are making on the community is long lasting. How can someone get in touch with Boulder Options? Is there a website that they can go to?
Yeah, you can go to boulderoptions.org and or just give us a call, 612-870-0748. That'd be the best way to get hold of us. But I just go to the website or just Google Boulder Options. That's quicker, it's easier. You can find us, you can learn more. And I urge people, it's not just Boulder Options, but it's like that young man you were playing catch with. And I had one young man, a neighbor, young boy, he's a grown man, obviously now, and he helped me when I was in college wash my car. And I didn't know how much it meant to him. He helped me wash the car and the rims, and we'd talk and joke and listen to music. And I played catch with him just like a little bit. And he wrote me a letter like 14 or 15 years ago talking about how that time was important and how he looked up to me and what I was doing, and always followed my career and followed me currently at Boulder Options. And now his sister is a mentoring for us inside our program. So just like you have no idea what that little pebble that you've thrown into the ocean is going to come out with. So for, it's Boulder Options, if it's Big Brothers and Big Sisters, Boys and Girls Club, a local organization near you, or just that kid next door, just give them a little more time.
Exactly. So for someone out there who's a blue collar worker, white collar worker, it doesn't matter. As adults, we all can impact a youth's life. And it doesn't always require a lot of times. Sometimes it's just, again, showing that you care or just asking them if they're all right. And as you stated, Darrell, listening to them, right?
Listening and smiling. Just with like the little neighbor boy. Sometimes I just kind of come outside and I sit down. Hey, how's it going? Carter's like, hey, how's it going? I kid him about life and about his girlfriend and all his other little things. But you just need to talk and listen, care, and smile.
Well, my friend, I appreciate you. I appreciate our friendship. You are an inspiration to many, but you're an inspiration to me. Continue the great work that you're doing in the community, that Boulder Options continues to do in the community, and thank you.
Thank you, Octavius. Appreciate it, and it's an honor to be on with you, man. Congratulations, and I'll be following you even closer now.
Thank you, my friend. So for my audience, please hit like, share, and subscribe to my podcast now so you can be alerted to future episodes. We appreciate you tuning in.